Hey drivers, all roads these days are bad, but I'm not talking about soccer moms on their cell phones or business execs in their BMWs paying more attention to their hair in the mirrors than they are to the road. And I'm not talking about the roads with the chronic bad traffic like the GW Bridge and the Cross Bronx Crawlway. And I'm not talking about those goat trails you find yourselves on sometimes when you're looking for a customer. I'm talking about roads that if you're just not paying attention, they can come back and bite you, they can surprise you, and you can end up in a whole lot of trouble. There's all sorts of roads like that through our nation. I'm going to talk about my personal 7 worst roads that have been the scene of far too many truck wrecks.
Hey there drivers, real quick before we get into today's video, quick mention from our sponsors GP Transco, a great mid-size carrier out of Illinois. These guys do things a little bit different from the other carriers and pay drivers really well. So if you're an experienced driver and want to earn while being treated with respect, check them out at their website at gptransco.com or give them a call now.
Now I've listed these roads in geographical order, north to south and then over to the east. These are not in particular order of badness, if that's the correct way to say it. So number 1 on my list is the old Trans-Canada Highway in British Columbia that wraps around the Fraser River Valley and runs through down into Boston Bar. Now, most guys don't ever get to take this road even anymore. Most of them will take the Coquihalla Highway, that's the new route that they put in. But that old Trans-Canada through Boston Bar along the Fraser River Canyon, it was susceptible to all sorts of weather, and it had sharp curves, and it was on a bit of a ledge that wrapped around the river, or wrapped by the river. It could be bad. It could ice up. It had lots of fog, and there was more than one time I scared myself coming down through there, going through Boston Bar. And you think the town is named for bars because, man, when you get to the bottom of the hill, you want to stop and get a drink. But it was actually called Boston Bar because it was the location of a sandbar that stuck out into the Fraser River. But that old Trans-Canada through Boston Bar, one of the worst roads I've ever been on back in the day. Number 2 on my list, moving south, also in British Columbia, is Old Highway 3 and the Selmo Creston Hill. Now this hill, as you can well imagine, runs between the towns of Creston and Selmo in British Columbia. And the hill is downbound. If you're headed west, it drops down into Selmo. Now, the first time I ever ran this hill, I'd had about 5 years mountain experience, I guess, and I was pretty confident in the mountains. And I got to the top of the Selmo Creston Hill, having left Creston, climbed to the summit, looked down at the hill I had to transverse, and I thought, oh, that doesn't look that bad. It looks pretty good to me. I know hills like this. It looks like Field Hill to me. So I set my Jake on position 3, headed down the hill. And what I didn't realize was that the part that I could see was only about halfway down the hill. So I had a pretty good smoke roll in there, and it was a lot longer hill than I anticipated just because I couldn't see the whole hill and I didn't know the hill. It was a lesson for me. But that's number 2 on my list. Number 3, going between Creston and Selmo. Number 3, moving south down into Oregon this time, is on Interstate 84, and again, the hill drops as you're heading north. And that can be a wicked hill, but from I don't know, about a third of the way down, you can see the entire valley below you, and it's a long way below you. It's not a really bad hill, but it's a long hill. It's a lot longer than you think it's going to be, and all sorts of truck speed records have been broken in that last mile down the hill as guys just run out because their brakes are too hot. But other than that, it's not too bad, but it's certainly a road to pay attention to. It's a road not to come down too quickly, and it's a road that takes all sorts of attention in the winter if you're headed the other way, because it means change for sure. Number 4 for me is I-70 west of Denver. And it's a well-traveled highway, but there are lots of curves, lots of blind spots, and you've just got to be on your game. It's heavily trafficked, and in the wintertime, that can be a treacherous piece of road. It's not banked well in some corners. There's lots of traffic, ski traffic and stuff to mess you up. So I-70 west of Denver, a road you always want to be paying attention to. Number 5, also in Colorado, but moving south once again, on a little highway called 160 is a hill called Wolf Creek Pass. It's through a ski area. It's kind of a 2-lane blacktop road. It's a road made famous by C.W. McCall's song. But Wolf Creek Pass can be a nasty, winding piece of road. It's bad in the wintertime as well as the summertime, but particularly in the winter, I guess. But there seems to be a lot of tourist traffic on it sometimes, and sometimes in a storm it can just be a desolate piece of road with lots of curves. You got to be on your game. You got to be watching where you're going all the time. Got to anticipate and slow for the curves. You've just got to be on your game for this road. It's a dangerous little piece of road. What number are we on now?
Number 6.
Number 6. I-40 west of Asheville on North Carolina. Now most people think of I-40 as a pretty straightforward highway, great big interstate, runs coast to coast damn near, and it's pretty easy cruising for the most part. But when you get into North Carolina west of Asheville, there are all sorts of nasty little curves and rock slides in that area. You've really got to be paying attention through there. There's a ton of traffic, and there have been more than a few truck wrecks on that little section. So, a piece of road to pay attention to for sure. Number 7 on my list is one that a lot of guys won't necessarily think of, but as you're coming south on I-77 through Virginia, there's a nasty little hill, and it goes from 2,900 feet up to about 75 feet at the bottom, but it's a short span, and we used to call it Fancy Gap because that's the name of the town at the bottom of the hill in Virginia. But man, you can really run away on Fancy Gap Hill if you're not paying attention. Now, happily, the nice thing about Fancy Gap, as I recall, was that there's a little Love's truck stop at the bottom of the hill where you can change your shorts if you need to, but that could be an ugly little hill, especially in the wintertime. Now, I couldn't possibly fill out the rest of this list myself, so we at Smart Trucking reached out to you drivers to see what you thought were the worst roads out there. We got a ton of submissions, and here's some of what you drivers had to say. Sam Sawyer wrote in. He said, State Highway 16 between Buffalo and Worland, Wyoming. 12% grades and major switchbacks. It's worse than US 93 running south out of Hamilton, Montana. We pull 48 and 28 doubles on these roads, and it's a challenge in the summer, much less the winter. Clayboy 699 wrote in, and here's a road I'd forgotten about, but he certainly is right. Wreck House in Newfoundland is my top pick for consistently seeing trucks flipped over. They can really catch you off guard coming off the boat late at night. That is a bad piece of road. Noir Resurrection says, Highway 285 from Pecos, Texas to the New Mexico border. Narrow lane with poor road conditions. The highway is known as one of the most dangerous stretches in Texas. Seen dozens of flipped over trucks and airlifts on that stretch. Calvin Leake, and he submitted a good one here. I've been down this road. Monarch Pass, US 50 in Colorado. US 40 west of Idaho Springs in Colorado, and 60 east of Globe, Arizona. I drive in these areas several times per year. High elevations and lots of switchbacks. 20 miles an hour and long downgrades. I'm sure many had said the most popular ones already, but no, you've got some of the best ones there, Calvin. Nick War, another bad stretch. Quebec Auto Route 389 between Baie-Comeau and Labrador. That is a bad road. Elk Blood 01. The last few miles down into Hell's Canyon going into Lewiston, Idaho on I-95 always had me on the edge of my seat. Yes, I know that road too, and it is ugly. Joshua Black, the $1 billion highway from Montrose to Durango, Colorado. 1,000-foot drops with no guardrails, tight turns, steep climbs, and a 14,000-foot summit. Makes Wolf Creek Pass look like a drag strip. Thank you, Joshua. And finally, from our friend Shannon Girdle, I have to nominate US 550 between Silverton and Durango. There are 3 mountain passes, each over 10,000 feet. Coalbank Pass at 10,640, Molasse Pass at 10,970, and Red Mountain Pass at 11,018 feet. Thank you, Shannon. To do this video, I was thinking about some of the dangerous roads, the worst roads that I've been on in my career. And I owe you guys a story, so here's a story from one of those roads and one of those trips. my old buddy Wayne Hunter and I had pulled a couple of B trains into Castlegar, BC, across Highway 3, and we'd come over the Selmo Creston Hill, which is an ugly hill. And when we got into Castlegar, we offloaded, but in the meantime, the hill had avalanched, and they closed the road, so we couldn't go back the way we had come. So we needed an alternative route out of there. Now, we could have gone west to the coast and then doubled back on the Trans-Canada on old number 1, but that was a long way out of the way, and we wanted to cut off a lot of that mileage. So we got looking at the map, and we found this little highway called Highway 23, and it went up through Galena Bay, and then there was a lake, and then the road continued on the other side of the lake up into Revelstoke. So we asked the local guys if they knew the road there, the guys at the plant where we unloaded, and he says, oh yeah, there's a lake there, but there's a ferry that will take you across. And I said, you know, big enough to take a couple of trucks? He goes, well, yeah, you should be all right, I think. And I thought, well, we haven't got much choice. It's either that or head for the coast. So we went up this little Highway 23 that kind of wrapped around this lake, and it was tight with the sides of our trailers rubbing the rock face on one side and wheels spinning out over the lake on the other side. I'm sure they've improved that highway since then, but it really wasn't meant for trucks. But we followed this thing around the mountain, got down, and the road kind of ended at the lake. And sure enough, there was a ferry there, but it wasn't a very, very big ferry. So we stopped and went and talked to the ferry captain and said, you know, can we get these trucks, or even just one of these trucks, on the ferry and make a couple of trips? How can we do it? He says, well, I've got room for both of you, but just that, but there's no cars here, so we should be all right. But he says, you've got to drive on this ferry, the two of you side by side, at exactly the same time, or the weight of the truck will tip the ferry and the other truck won't be able to drive on because the deck will be at such an angle it'll stick up out of the water. So we thought, oh, this sounds like fun. But we crept onto this ferry, and we just fit. We were both 80 feet long, and this ferry must have been about 95 or maybe 100 feet long. Side by side, we both fit on this ferry, and the captain says, okay, lock your brakes, we're good to go. And we of course had the brakes set, and he fired up the engine and pushed out into the middle of the lake, and there was a real current in the lake. So we were headed for a point over there to go towards Revelstoke. We got into the current, and it pushed the boat way south of where we wanted to be because of the weight the captain hadn't counted on having such a struggle getting across. But he finally got close to the far shore and then edged his way back to the unloading ramp on the other side of the lake. It wasn't a very big lake. You could see right across it, no trouble. But it must have taken us an hour to go about half a mile, I guess. But anyway, and we got back off on the other side and wound our way up into Revelstoke and headed back to Calgary from there. It was quite a ride, and I still think of that road sometimes when I'm thinking about some of the worst roads I've ever been on. All of these roads present a challenge to truck drivers above and beyond the norm. Now, distracted driving is becoming a terrible thing in our industry. These roads, distracted driving can kill you, and we don't want that. You've got to stay on your game. Stay safe, keep the rubber side down, and I'll see you on the back haul.